How's it going, everyone? This is Kevin. Today I want to bring along with me to see if you truly need more megapixels or if you're fine with the 33 megapixel sensor of the Sony A7 IV. So let's jump right into it. So a question that I've been asked quite a bit recently ever since uploading videos about the Sony A7 IV is 33 megapixels enough for photography? So today I want to do a little bit of a showdown between my Sony A7 IV and the Sony A7R III when it comes down to a megapixel kind of, battle, if you will, just to compare both of them to see if you truly need the extra megapixels, since this camera is 42 megapixels and this one is 33. It's a big kind of difference, if you will. It's not the Sony A7R IV where it has 61 or something like that megapixels, but I know a lot of people have been asking me about it, mainly wildlife photography and portrait photographers, to see if it really would be a better camera just to upgrade to this rather than get like the Sony A7R IV or the R3 or possibly wait for the R5. Now you might want to ask yourself, is this really necessary? And I might counter with, is anything necessary? Of course not, but we have the gear and we have the time, so we're gonna go ahead and compare it, and it might just answer your question if you really need more megapixels, or you might be fine with this upgrade to the 33 megapixel sensor of the A7 IV. Like I mentioned, most people that have asked me this have been wildlife photographers and portrait photographers, so we're gonna cover the portrait side because I do not have any wildlife around me, and it is kind of cold today to really just go out and about to find some wildlife that we might not even find. So we're just gonna do a portrait here in my bedroom and have my wife get some portraits done of her where I can compare both cameras to each other with the same focal length, same settings and everything, and just showcase, zoomed in, and just show you in Lightroom kind of a little bit of a comparison between both, see if it really matters to you or if you would be just fine with that. Since I know most wildlife photographers need the crop in since they're kind of farther away, that's one of the good reasons why they want that extra megapixels, as well as with the portrait photographers, the extra megapixels is quite nice when it comes down to having that quality and just more information to work with when it comes down to the portraits. So yeah, we're just gonna do the portraits and see what happens. So we're gonna be using my Amaran lights and then a backdrop here in the master bedroom, and just gonna kind of play around with the lighting and see what we can make out of it, and then take two photos that I really like and then compare those two only. That way we don't go all crazy above and beyond with it, but just want to take what I have in mind right now that I saw kind of like low inspiration posts on Pinterest. But so yeah, this light right here is the one that we're going to be using, and then I have the other one set up over there, but I'll show you the setup real quick if you really want to see something like that, because I know some people like to see how you take some photos, so that's what I like to do too. So here we go. So this is the awesome setup that we have. Don't rule it out until you see some of the photos that we're about to take. But yeah, we have that one light, another light to kind of get the background separation, our backdrop that we have, and we're just gonna use first the A7 IV. We're gonna do it probably around like almost 70 millimeters, maybe 70. I'm not really sure yet, but I'm gonna keep them as close as possible to each other. So obviously, I'm gonna do the same settings and everything on both, so you can see how it looks. So we're gonna use the trusted Andy tripod as well. That way we can keep them exactly the same, and you guys can not. Obviously it'll be the same. So because I know somebody would say, "Oh, you did them differently," blah blah. So exactly the same. We'll use both cameras exactly the same. Here we go. And open when you're ready. There we go. One, two, three, open. There we go. So now that I've kind of done my edits for both of the photos to keep them as similar as possible, the one on the left is the Sony A7R III and the one on the right is the Sony A7 IV. So they got a little bit off, so my apologies on that end. When you change lenses with such a heavy lens, sometimes it just kind of like moves up and down. So it is what it is. They're both basically about the same. And I know that because with the Tamron 35 to 150, sometimes when you're kind of going there, and you're trying to take it off, since this is where you, at the bottom of it, that's where you get the different focal ranges. It kind of moved it just ever so slightly. Like the Sony A7R3 got to a 66, and then the Sony A7 IV was at a 63, which keep that into consideration when comparing these right here. But we're gonna kind of go and zoom in where it's at 100, basically, so that we can see what it would be at 100 for both. So yeah, I mean, you can see this, the one on the left is just slightly more zoomed in at both at 100. This is like the quality basically of both. I mean, to me, it's not that big of a deal, I guess, but you can see it's a little bit more punched in, so you get more, I guess, information when it comes to it. Because if I zoom back out, you kind of see that they're both pretty, obviously from afar you can't really tell. It's only when you're having to crop in if you really want to kind of bring it in more in front, which, I mean, it's up to you, I guess, as a photographer, what you want. But so far, I mean, to me, they kind of both look great. Obviously, the one thing that I do like about the Sony A7 IV was that it's easier to eye autofocus than the A7R3. So that makes it a little bit kind of, I guess, if you're wanting to be more portraits and wildlife photographer, keep that in mind that the A7 IV has the bird eye autofocus and animal autofocus, obviously, and the human one. The A7R3 only has the animal and human, so if you're kind of dealing with birds, sometimes it'll pick it up, sometimes it won't. It just really depends on if it can tell. But that way, if you're really wanting to just only get for the, what's it called, the megapixels, to me, they're fairly kind of both the same. Obviously, like I said, just a little bit more cropped in whenever you have the A7R3 because of the 42. But now the ultimate question is, does it really matter? Is it something that you're really gonna be like, oh man, those little bit of extra megapixels matter a lot? I don't know. I mean, that's more your preference than mine. I would obviously say that if it was the A7R4 at 61 megapixels, yes, that would make a massive difference compared to the A7 IV with 33, because that's almost pretty much double. It's close enough. So that alone, yes, you would see more cropping availability, but you give and take for what you want. I mean, do you honestly need that much? It's up to you. I mean, if you want to get the A1 that has like 50 megapixels, I think it is, and it's really fast, but then you get $6,500 worth of a camera, so kind of expensive. But for me, I personally, from the 42 to 33 megapixels, I wouldn't mind going with a 33 with the more updated everything, and as well having a good video camera itself. Obviously, if you're more photographer kind of oriented, the A7R3 is a phenomenal camera, but like I've made a video about it before, talking about the price point that doesn't make sense to me is going with a $2,900 camera, give or take, for the A7R3 versus a $2,500 of the A7 IV with more updated everything. The flip out screen as well with the 10-bit video. So with today's age in social media, having some video is always great. So you have that opportunity as well. But that's pretty much it when it comes down to both these photos and, you know, comparing them like that. Because in all honesty, I mean, from far away, I couldn't tell everything. I think they're both really great in sharpness and color and everything. I did have to tweak a little bit of the colors for the skin tones to match. I'm not really sure if it's just because, like, I don't think Lightroom, I mean, with Lightroom, sometimes with the newer, like, camera modes and everything, I know the sensors and stuff might be a little bit different, but that might be a Sony issue. But yeah, got them as close as possible. But that's the only difference that I can talk about right there. So you got your cropping mode right here to see the difference. That's all you kind of really are here for anyway. And there you go, those are both the photos that I showed you, just kind of like the final outcome, showing them, you know, normal and then a little bit up close to see the difference of quality, to see if you really can tell with the megapixel difference between these two cameras. Is it really that important to go with a higher sensor megapixel count kind of style of camera for you? That really is for you to decide with what you need in a camera. For me, honestly, the 33 megapixels is more than enough, especially comparing it to the 42 megapixel sensor of the A7R3. Now, if I was comparing it to the A7R4, that it has like 61 megapixels, it would honestly, yes, make sense to kind of go with that camera if I really want to crop in a lot more, and I notice that it's something that's going to be a necessity in my workflow. For me, I like to not crop as much when it comes down to my photos, and I try to make sure that I get everything as much as I can in frame. But if you're using it for wildlife photography where you don't have the luxury to kind of redo the photo because you're very time consumed, it's a great obviously deal to just go with a camera like the A7R4 or even the A1. Sadly, the price of those are a lot higher, so it's really what convenes you with your budget to know if it's better to go with one or the other. For me, it came down with the budget for the A7 IV. I knew with the 33 megapixels, it was more than enough megapixels to crop in if needed, but it doesn't need to be a necessity for me since I'm not really shooting anything crazy that I need to crop in a lot more. The A7R4 and the A1 have enough megapixels for you to crop in, and obviously are really great if you're doing wildlife and everything kind of from a farther that you need to be, like with those more telephoto lenses. So that's up to you to decide. I would love to know your thought and input if it really matters to you, the 33 versus the 42 or even 61. Are you really that much of a cropper, or are you really just kind of fine with more getting it in camera with minimalizing kind of how much you crop in for social media? I mean, it all depends what you use it for. But with all that said and done, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, share this video with a friend. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.